The night my husband told me he wanted someone younger, I stood in our kitchen, hands trembling, heart pounding, the scent of his favorite stew still lingering in the air. 25 years of marriage, laughter, and sacrifice, swept aside with a single cold confession. I need more excitement, Linda. I've met someone new. He expected tears, begging, maybe even anger. But what I said next left him absolutely speechless. Before I share what happened next, please subscribe to my channel and join our community of strong voices. If you believe in self-worth, second chances, and the power of standing up for yourself, hit that like button and tell me in the comments. Where are you watching from and what does love mean to you? Your support helps me share more stories like this. My name is Linda, and for 25 years I was a wife, a mother, and the quiet force that kept our family together. I met Tom in college. He was charming, ambitious, and made me feel like the only woman in the world. We built a life together. A modest home, 2 beautiful children, and 1,000 small memories stitched into the fabric of our days. I gave up my career to raise our kids, to support Tom's dreams, to make sure our home was a place of warmth and comfort. I was the one who remembered birthdays, who stayed up late sewing costumes for school plays, who made sure Tom's shirts were pressed before every big meeting. I thought we were a team. I thought we were forever. But as the years passed, I noticed Tom changing. He started working late, spending more time at the gym, buying new clothes and cologne. He grew distant, distracted, always on his phone. I tried to ignore the signs, telling myself it was just a phase, that every marriage had its ups and downs. Then one ordinary Tuesday night, as I set the table for dinner, Tom cleared his throat and looked at me with eyes I barely recognized. Linda, we need to talk. I knew in that instant that everything was about to change. He didn't waste time. I've met someone. She's younger. I need more excitement in my life. I think it's best if we separate. The words hung in the air, heavy and sharp. I felt the world tilt beneath me, the years of sacrifice and love unraveling in a single moment. I waited for the tears, the anger, the desperate urge to beg him to stay. But instead I felt something else. A quiet, steady strength rising up inside me. I looked Tom in the eye, my voice calm and clear. If you think you'll find happiness by running from what we built, then go. But don't expect me to fall apart. I've spent 25 years building a life not just for you but for myself. And I'm not done yet. He stared at me stunned. He'd expected heartbreak, maybe even a scene. But I refused to give him that satisfaction. As he packed a bag and left that night, I stood at the window watching his car disappear down the street. I felt the ache of loss, yes, but also a spark of something new. Freedom. Possibility. The chance to rediscover who I was beyond the role of wife and mother. But as I turned away from the window, I realized that the hardest part wasn't over. I would have to face my children, my friends, and the world. I would have to rebuild piece by piece the life I thought I'd lost. And I was determined to do it on my own terms. The house felt impossibly quiet after Tom left. I wandered from room to room, touching the framed photos on the walls, the souvenirs from family vacations, the little notes our children had left over the years. Every corner held a memory, some sweet, some bittersweet, all of them echoing with the life we'd built together. I sat at the kitchen table staring at the empty chair across from me. For a moment I let myself grieve. I cried for the young woman who'd fallen in love with Tom, for the mother who'd put everyone else first, for the wife who'd believed in forever. I let the tears fall hot and silent, until there was nothing left but a hollow ache. But as the night wore on, something shifted inside me. I remembered the words my mother once told me, "You are stronger than you know, Linda. Don't let anyone else decide your worth." I wiped my eyes, stood up, and made myself a cup of tea. I wasn't going to let this be the end of my story. The next morning I called my best friend, Sharon. She answered on the first ring, her voice full of concern. Linda? Are you all right? I took a shaky breath. Tom left. He's with someone else. There was a pause, then Sharon's voice, fierce and loving. Oh honey, I'm so sorry. But you listen to me, you are not alone. You have me and you have everyone who loves you. We're going to get through this together. Her words were a lifeline. I realized then that I didn't have to face this alone. I had friends, family, and a strength I'd forgotten I possessed. I spent the next few days taking small steps. I cleaned out Tom's closet, boxed up his things, and reclaimed the space as my own. I made a list of things I'd always wanted to do but never had the time or courage to try. Painting, traveling, taking a cooking class. For the first time in years, I let myself dream. But as I started to rebuild, I knew there would be challenges ahead. Tom's absence was a wound that would take time to heal, and the world was full of people who would judge, gossip, and offer unwanted advice. Still, I was determined to move forward. I was ready to find out who Linda was, beyond the titles of wife and mother. I was ready to write the next chapter of my life. But just as I started to feel hopeful, I received a message that threatened to shake my resolve. A message from Tom's new girlfriend. I stared at my phone, my heart pounding as I read the message from Tom's new girlfriend, Vanessa. It was short, but every word stung. Hi Linda, I know this is awkward, but Tom needs some of his things. I hope you can be understanding. We both want this transition to be as smooth as possible. Wishing you the best. I set the phone down, my hands shaking. It was one thing to lose my husband, but another to be spoken to like a footnote in my own life. I felt anger rise up, hot, sharp, and cleansing. For so long, I'd been the one to smooth things over, to keep the peace, to swallow my own pain for the sake of others. Not this time. I took a deep breath and replied, my words measured but firm. Vanessa, Tom is welcome to collect his things. Please let me know when he'll be by. I wish you both well. I refused to let her see me as weak or desperate. I would handle this with dignity even if it broke my heart. When Tom arrived a few days later, he looked uncomfortable, avoiding my eyes as he packed his boxes. I watched him, feeling a strange sense of detachment. This was the man I'd loved for half my life, now a stranger in our home. As he loaded the last box into his car, he paused at the door. Linda, I hope you'll be okay. I met his gaze, steady and unflinching. I will be, Tom. In fact, I think I'll be better than okay. He nodded, unsure, and drove away. I closed the door behind him, locking it with a finality that felt both sad and liberating. That night, I poured myself a glass of wine and sat on the porch watching the stars. I thought about the years I'd given, the love I'd shared, and the future that was now mine to shape. I felt grief, yes, but also a growing sense of freedom. As I drifted off to sleep, I promised myself that I would not let this ending define me. I would find joy again on my own terms. But as the days passed and I began to rebuild, I discovered that Tom's departure was only the beginning of my transformation, and that my greatest strength was yet to be revealed. The first week after Tom left, I felt like I was living in someone else's house. The silence was heavy, but it was also full of possibility. I started each morning with a walk around the neighborhood, breathing in the crisp air and letting the rhythm of my footsteps clear my mind. I noticed things I'd never seen before. The way the sunlight danced on the maple trees, the laughter of children playing down the street, the freedom in simply choosing my own path. One morning as I returned from my walk, I found a letter in the mailbox. It was from the local community center, inviting me to join a painting class for adults. I smiled, remembering how I used to love art before life got so busy. Maybe this was the universe nudging me to rediscover the parts of myself I'd set aside. I signed up that afternoon, nerves fluttering in my stomach. The first class was awkward. I was the oldest student by a decade and my hands shook as I picked up the brush. But as the hours passed, I lost myself in the colors and shapes, the simple joy of creating something just for me. For the first time in years, I felt truly alive. After class, I stopped by the cafe next door for a cup of tea. As I sipped, I overheard two women at the next table whispering about Tom and his new girlfriend. I felt the familiar sting of gossip, but instead of shrinking away, I lifted my chin and smiled at them. Yes, Tom left. But I'm doing just fine, thank you. Their eyes widened and one of them, her name was Carol, leaned over. Linda, you're braver than I could ever be. If you ever want to join our book club, we'd love to have you. I thanked her, feeling a spark of pride. Maybe I wasn't just surviving, I was starting to thrive. But that evening, as I sorted through the mail, I found an envelope addressed to Tom. Out of habit, I almost tossed it aside, but something made me open it. Inside was a notice from the bank. A late payment on a loan I didn't know existed. My heart pounded as I read the details. Tom had taken out a second mortgage on our house, and the payments were months behind. I sat down hard, the room spinning. Had Tom put our home at risk without telling me? What else didn't I know? As I stared at the letter, I realized that my journey was far from over. If I wanted to protect what I'd built, I would have to dig deeper, find answers, and fight for my future. And I was more determined than ever to do just that. I sat at the kitchen table, the bank notice trembling in my hands. My mind raced with questions and fears. How long had Tom been hiding this from me? What else had he kept secret? I felt a wave of anger, sharper than anything I'd felt since he left. After 25 years of marriage, I deserved better than lies and half-truths. I called the bank first thing the next morning. The woman on the line was kind but firm. Yes, Mrs. Carter, the loan is in both your names. Payments are 4 months behind. If it's not resolved soon, the house could go into foreclosure. My heart pounded. This house was more than just walls and a roof. It was the place where I'd raised my children, celebrated birthdays, and built a life. I refused to let Tom's recklessness take it away from me. I called Sharon, my best friend, and poured out the whole story. She listened quietly, then said, "Linda, you need to talk to a lawyer. Don't wait. Protect yourself." Taking her advice, I made an appointment with a local attorney, Ms. Patel. She listened carefully, her eyes sharp and sympathetic. "You have rights, Linda. If Tom took out that loan without your knowledge, we can fight it. And if you're heading for divorce, you need to know exactly where you stand." The word divorce still stung, but I nodded. I want to keep my home. I want to start over, but I don't want to lose everything I've worked for. Miss Patel smiled. "You're stronger than you think. Let's get to work." Over the next few days, I gathered documents, made calls, and started to piece together the truth. It was exhausting, but with every step I felt a little more in control. I realized that I'd spent years letting Tom handle the finances, trusting him to do what was best for us. Now I was learning to trust myself. In the evenings, I found comfort in my painting class and the new friends I was making. Carol from the cafe invited me to her book club, and soon I was spending my nights laughing and sharing stories with women who understood what it meant to start over. But just as I began to feel hopeful, Tom called out of the blue. His voice was tense. "Linda, I need to talk. It's important." I hesitated, my guard up. "What is it, Tom?" He sighed. "I made some mistakes. I need your help." I felt a surge of anger and disbelief. After everything he'd done, he still expected me to save him. But this time I was ready to stand my ground. I met Tom at a small cafe downtown, the same one where we'd celebrated anniversaries and birthdays in happier times. He looked older, more tired than I remembered, his confidence replaced by a nervous energy. He barely met my eyes as he stirred his coffee. "Linda, I know I've made a mess of things," he began, his voice low. "The loan, the house. I thought I could handle it, but I was wrong. Vanessa, she doesn't know about the money problems. I need your help to fix this before everything falls apart. I listened, my heart a mix of anger and pity. For years, I'd been the one to clean up his messes, to smooth over his mistakes. But I wasn't that woman anymore. I took a deep breath, my voice steady. Tom, you made your choices. I'm not here to rescue you. I'm here to protect myself and our children. I've already spoken to a lawyer. I know my rights, and I'm not going to let you take away the home I built. He looked stunned, as if he'd expected me to fold, to forgive, to fix everything like I always had. But I held his gaze, unflinching. I wish you well, Tom, I said quietly. But you need to face the consequences of your actions. I'm done carrying your burdens. He nodded, defeated, and for the first time I saw him as he truly was. A man who'd run from his problems only to find himself alone. As I left the cafe, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. I was no longer defined by Tom's choices or his approval. I was free to build a life on my own terms. That night, I painted until midnight, the colors on the canvas bright and bold. I realized that every brushstroke was a step toward healing, a declaration of my own worth. But as I drifted off to sleep, my phone buzzed with a message from Ms. Patel. Linda, I found something in the financial records. You need to see this. It could change everything. The next morning, I sat at my kitchen table staring at Ms. Patel's message. My mind raced with possibilities. Had Tom hidden more debts? Was there something about the house I didn't know? I called her office as soon as they opened, my hands trembling as I waited for her to pick up. Linda, thank you for calling so quickly, Ms. Patel said, her voice calm but urgent. I've been going through the financial records and I found something you need to see in person. Can you come by this afternoon? I agreed, my nerves on edge all day. When I arrived at her office, she greeted me with a reassuring smile and led me to a small conference room. She spread out a stack of documents on the table. Linda, it turns out Tom refinanced the house twice in the last 5 years. But here's the important part. Your name is on the original deed and the second mortgage was taken out without your signature. That's illegal. The bank should never have approved it. I stared at the papers, relief and anger warring inside me. So what does that mean for me? Ms. Patel's eyes softened. It means you have a strong case. We can challenge the second mortgage and you have a good chance of keeping your home. Tom will have to answer for what he did, but you're not powerless here. For the first time since Tom left, I felt hope bloom in my chest. I wasn't just a victim of his choices. I had rights and I had a voice. Ms. Patel continued, I'll file the paperwork right away. In the meantime, keep records of everything. Calls, messages, any contact with Tom or the bank. And Linda, remember, you're not alone in this. I left her office with a new sense of determination. I called Sharon to share the news, and she cheered so loudly I had to hold the phone away from my ear. See? I told you, Linda. You're stronger than you think. That evening, I sat on my porch watching the sun set over the neighborhood I loved. I thought about all the years I'd spent putting others first and how for the first time I was fighting for myself. But as I sipped my tea, a car pulled up in front of my house. Vanessa stepped out, her face pale and anxious. She walked up the steps and knocked on my door. Linda, can we talk? She asked, her voice trembling. I think I made a mistake. I need your help. I opened the door, surprised to see Vanessa standing there, her eyes red and her hands twisting nervously. For a moment, I considered sending her away. After all, she was the reason Tom had left. But something in her face, a mix of regret and fear, made me pause. Come in, Vanessa, I said quietly, stepping aside. She sat on the edge of the sofa, glancing around the living room as if seeing it for the first time. Linda, I'm sorry to show up like this. I know I'm the last person you want to see, but I didn't know. I didn't know about the house, the loans, any of it. Tom told me everything was fine. He said you'd moved on. I sat across from her, my heart softening just a little. Tom hasn't been honest with either of us, it seems. She nodded, tears slipping down her cheeks. He's been distant lately. I found the bank letters, the overdue notices. When I asked him, he got angry and shut me out. I don't know what to do, Linda. I thought I was starting a new life, but now I feel like I'm drowning in his mess. For a moment we sat in silence, two women bound by the same man's lies. I realized that Vanessa wasn't my enemy. She was just another casualty of Tom's choices. I'm sorry for what you're going through, I said gently. But you need to protect yourself. Don't let Tom drag you down with him. I've hired a lawyer and I'm fighting for my home. You should think about what you need too. She looked at me, hope flickering in her eyes. Do you think we could help each other? I considered her words. It wasn't easy to forgive, but I knew that holding on to anger would only hurt me in the end. Maybe we can. But first you need to be honest. With yourself and with me. No more secrets. Vanessa nodded, determination settling on her face. No more secrets. As she left, I felt a strange sense of peace. I couldn't change the past, but I could choose how I moved forward. And maybe, just maybe, I could help someone else find her strength too. But as I settled in for the evening, a letter from my daughter arrived, hinting at a new challenge and a new adventure on the horizon. I sat down with my daughter's letter, my heart fluttering with curiosity. We'd grown closer since Tom left, sharing long phone calls and weekend visits, but she'd never written me a letter before. I opened the envelope, her familiar handwriting bringing a smile to my face. I've been thinking a lot about everything you've been through. Watching you find your strength has inspired me more than you know. I want you to know how proud I am of you, not just for surviving but for thriving. I know it hasn't been easy, but you've shown me what real courage looks like. I have some news. I've been offered a job in Paris and I'm thinking of taking it. Scary, but I keep thinking about how you started over, how you built a new life from the ashes. I want to do the same. Would you come visit me if I go? Maybe we could have an adventure together. Just the two of us. Love, Megan. Tears filled my eyes as I read her words. I thought about all the years I'd spent putting everyone else first, about the fear that had kept me from chasing my own dreams. Now my daughter was asking me to join her on a new adventure, to step into the unknown together. I picked up the phone and called her, my voice trembling with excitement. Megan, I would love nothing more than to visit you in Paris. Let's make new memories, just you and me. We laughed and made plans, our hearts full of hope and possibility. For the first time in a long time, I felt truly alive, ready to embrace whatever came next. As I hung up, I looked around my home, the walls now echoing with the promise of new beginnings. I realized that the end of my marriage wasn't the end of my story. It was the start of a new chapter, one filled with adventure, love, and the courage to live life on my own terms. But as I packed my bags for Paris, I knew there would be challenges ahead. Still, I was no longer afraid. I was ready to face the world, one bold step at a time. The day I boarded the plane to Paris, I felt a mix of nerves and excitement I hadn't known since I was a girl. My suitcase was packed with sensible shoes, a new journal, and a heart wide open to whatever the world might bring. Megan met me at the airport, her eyes shining with pride and joy. Mom, you made it, she cried, hugging me tight. I can't believe we're really doing this. We took a taxi through the city, the streets alive with the glow of evening lights and the hum of possibility. Megan's apartment was small but charming, with a view of the rooftops and the distant spire of the Eiffel Tower. We stayed up late that first night, sipping tea and talking about everything, her new job, my new life, and all the dreams we'd put on hold for too long. The next morning, Megan left for work and I set out to explore the city on my own. I wandered through markets and museums, tasted fresh croissants, and let the beauty of Paris fill my soul. For the first time in years, I felt truly free. No one to answer to, no one to please but myself. That afternoon, I found a little art studio tucked away on a quiet street. The owner, a kind woman named Elise, invited me in to join a painting class. I hesitated, but something in her smile made me say yes. I spent the afternoon lost in color and light, my worries melting away with every brushstroke. When I returned to Megan's apartment, she greeted me with a grin. "You look happy, Mom." "Really happy?" I laughed, feeling lighter than I had in years. "I am, sweetheart. I really am." But as the days passed and I settled into this new rhythm, I realized that starting over wasn't just about finding joy. It was about facing fears, letting go of old hurts, and learning to trust myself again. And as I stood on the balcony one evening watching the city lights twinkle, I knew that my journey was far from over. Paris was just the beginning. The days in Paris unfolded like a dream. Megan and I explored the city together on weekends, strolling along the Seine, marveling at the art in the Louvre and sharing laughter over tiny cups of coffee in bustling cafes. I watched my daughter blossom in her new life, her confidence growing with every challenge she faced. It made me proud and it made me reflect on my own journey. During the weekdays while Megan was at work, I found my own adventures. I returned to Elise's art studio where I was welcomed like an old friend. The other students, a lively mix of locals and expats, encouraged me to try new techniques and even display my work in a small group show. For the first time, I saw my paintings not just as a hobby, but as a reflection of my resilience and hope. One afternoon after class, Elise invited me to join her and a few friends for dinner. We sat around a long table sharing stories in a blend of French and English, and I realized how much I'd grown. I was no longer the woman who waited for life to happen. I was living it, one bold step at a time. But even in the midst of all this joy, there were moments of doubt. Sometimes, late at night, I'd lie awake and wonder if I was truly moving on, or just running from the pain of the past. I missed my home, my friends, and the familiar rhythms of my old life. I worried about what would happen when it was time to return. Megan noticed my quiet moments, and one evening as we watched the Eiffel Tower sparkle, she took my hand. "Mom, you don't have to have it all figured out. You're allowed to miss what you left behind and still love what you're discovering. I'm just glad you're here with me." Her words soothed my heart. I realized that healing wasn't a straight line. It was a journey with setbacks and leaps forward, with tears and laughter, with old wounds and new beginnings. As my time in Paris drew to a close, Elise surprised me with a small farewell party at the studio. My paintings hung on the walls and my new friends toasted to courage, to art, and to second chances. But as I packed my bags for home, I received a message from Sharon. "Linda, there's something you need to know about Tom. Call me as soon as you land." The flight home from Paris was a blur of memories and emotions. I gazed out the window at the clouds, replaying every moment with Megan, every new friend, every painting I'd left behind in Elise's studio. I felt changed, stronger, braver, and more myself than I'd been in years. But Sharon's message echoed in my mind, a thread of worry tugging at my peace. As soon as I landed, I called her from the airport. Her voice was urgent. "Linda, I didn't want to worry you while you were away, but Tom's been in the hospital. He had a health scare, nothing life-threatening, but it shook him up. He's been asking for you." I felt a swirl of emotions, concern, resentment, and a strange sense of responsibility. After everything, Tom still turned to me in his time of need. I took a deep breath. "Thank you for telling me, Sharon. I'll go see him." The hospital was quiet when I arrived. Tom looked smaller, more fragile than I remembered, his bravado stripped away. He managed a weak smile. "Linda, I didn't think you'd come." I sat by his bed, my heart steady. "I'm here, Tom. What do you need?" He looked at me, tears in his eyes. "I just wanted to say I'm sorry. For everything. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I needed you to hear it from me." I nodded, feeling a gentle release inside. "I forgave you a long time ago, Tom. For both our sakes." We talked for a while. About the past, about our children, about the lives we'd built and the mistakes we'd made. When I left, I felt lighter, as if a final door had closed behind me. Back home, I unpacked my suitcase and hung a painting from Paris on the living room wall. I called Megan to tell her about Tom, and she listened with compassion and pride. "You did the right thing, Mom. You're stronger than you know." That night, as I sat by the window with a cup of tea, I realized that forgiveness wasn't just about letting go of anger. It was about making space for new joy, new dreams, and new love. But as I drifted off to sleep, my phone buzzed with a message from Elise. "Linda, there's an art show in Paris next spring. They want to feature your work. Are you ready for your next adventure? Will Linda embrace her new life as an artist? And what surprises await her as she steps fully into her own future?" The message from Elise felt like a spark in my soul. An art show in Paris. My paintings on display for the world to see. I read her words over and over, hardly believing this was my life now. For so long I'd been the woman in the background, supporting everyone else's dreams. Now I was being invited to step into the light. I called Elise right away, my voice trembling with excitement. "Are you sure they want me?" She laughed, warm and encouraging. "Linda, your work touched everyone who saw it. The gallery director said your paintings have a quiet strength, just like you. Will you come?" I didn't hesitate. Yes, I'll come." The next few months were a whirlwind of preparation. I set up a small studio in my sunroom, painting every day, pouring my heart into every canvas. Sharon visited often, bringing coffee and cheering me on. Even Megan sent photos of Paris, little reminders of the city that had helped me find myself again. But it wasn't always easy. There were days when doubt crept in, when I wondered if I was good enough, if I belonged in a gallery halfway across the world. On those days, I remembered the journey I'd taken. The heartbreak, the healing, the courage it took to start over. I painted through the fear, letting every brushstroke remind me of my own resilience. As the show approached, I booked my ticket to Paris. Megan would meet me there, and Elise promised to help with every detail. I felt a mix of nerves and anticipation, but mostly I felt proud. I was no longer just surviving, I was thriving. The night before I left, I stood in my living room, surrounded by my finished paintings. I thought of Tom, of the life we'd shared and the life I'd built on my own. I whispered a quiet thank you, to the past, to the pain, to the strength I'd found within myself. But as I zipped up my suitcase, a letter arrived from the gallery. There was a last-minute change. The director wanted me to give a short speech at the opening. My heart pounded. Could I find the words to share my story with a room full of strangers? The days leading up to the art show passed in a blur of excitement and nerves. I practiced my speech in front of the mirror, my hands shaking as I tried to find the right words. How could I sum up a lifetime of love, loss, and rediscovery in just a few minutes? Sharon called every evening, offering encouragement and reminding me, "Just speak from your heart, Linda. That's what people will remember." When I arrived in Paris, Megan was waiting at the airport, her arms open wide. "You're going to be amazing, Mom," she whispered as we hugged. Elise met us at the gallery, her eyes shining with pride as she showed me the space where my paintings would hang. The walls were bright and welcoming, and seeing my work displayed so beautifully brought tears to my eyes. The night of the opening, the gallery buzzed with energy. Strangers admired my paintings, asking questions about my inspiration and my journey. Megan and Elise hovered nearby, their support a steady comfort. As the director introduced me, I felt my heart race, but I took a deep breath and stepped up to the microphone. I looked out at the crowd, some faces familiar, most not, and began to speak. For many years, I lost myself in the roles of wife and mother. When my marriage ended, I thought my story was over. But I discovered that endings can be beginnings, too. Through art, I found my voice again. Every painting here is a piece of my journey, a journey of heartbreak, healing, and hope. The room was silent, every eye on me. I continued, "If you're standing at the edge of something new, afraid to take the first step, I hope my story reminds you. It's never too late to start over. You are stronger than you know." As I finished, the crowd erupted in applause. Megan hugged me, tears in her eyes. "You did it, Mom. You really did." That night, as I walked along the Seine with Megan and Elise, I felt a sense of peace and pride I'd never known before. I had faced my fears, shared my truth, and found a new family in the most unexpected of places. But as the show came to a close, the gallery director approached me with an offer that would change everything. A chance to stay in Paris and teach art to others searching for their own new beginnings. I stood in the quiet gallery after the show, the last guests filtering out, the lights casting a golden glow on my paintings. The director approached, her smile warm and genuine. "Linda, your story touched so many tonight. We'd be honored if you'd consider staying in Paris a bit longer. Teach a workshop, share your journey with others who need hope." For a moment I was speechless. Me? Teaching art in Paris? It felt like a dream I'd never dared to dream. Megan squeezed my hand, her eyes shining with excitement. "You should do it, Mom. You have so much to give." I thought of all the women I'd met in my painting class back home, the friends I'd made in Paris, and the strangers who'd found comfort in my story tonight. I realized that my journey wasn't just about healing myself, it was about helping others find their own strength too. I smiled at the director. "I'd love to stay. If my story can help even one person believe in themselves again, it's worth it." The next few weeks were a whirlwind. I led workshops in the gallery, guiding people of all ages as they poured their hearts onto canvas. Some were healing from heartbreak, others searching for purpose, all of them longing for connection. We laughed, we cried, and we created beauty together. Megan visited often, cheering me on and sharing her own stories of courage with my students. Elise became a dear friend, her kindness a constant reminder that new beginnings can come at any age. One evening, after a particularly moving class, a young woman approached me. "Thank you, Linda. I was afraid to start over, but your story gave me hope. I think I can do it now." I hugged her, tears in my eyes. "You can. And you're not alone." As spring blossomed in Paris, I realized I had found a new home, not just in the city but in my own heart. I was no longer defined by my past, by what I'd lost, or by who had left me behind. I was defined by the love I gave, the courage I found, and the lives I touched. But as my time in Paris drew to a close, I received a letter from home, an invitation to return and share my story with the women's group at my old community center. It was time to bring everything I'd learned back to where it all began. Will Linda's return home inspire others to find their own strength? And what new surprises await as she steps fully into her new life? The day I returned home from Paris, the air felt different, brighter, somehow as if the world itself was welcoming me back. My little house, once filled with memories of heartbreak, now felt like a sanctuary. I set my suitcase down in the hallway and took a deep breath, letting the familiar scents and sounds wash over me. Sharon was the first to greet me, bursting through the door with a bouquet of wildflowers and a grin. "Linda, you look like a woman who's seen the world and come back stronger." We sat at my kitchen table, sipping tea as I told her about the art show, the workshops, and the people I'd met. Sharon listened, her eyes shining with pride. "You've become a beacon, Linda. People need to hear your story." A few days later, I stood in front of the women's group at the community center, my heart pounding with nerves and excitement. The room was filled with familiar faces, neighbors, old friends, even Carol from the book club. I saw women of all ages, some smiling, some with tears in their eyes, all of them waiting to hear what I had to say. I took a deep breath and began. "When my marriage ended, I thought my life was over. I was lost, afraid, and certain I'd never find joy again. But I learned that endings can be beginnings too. I found my strength in the most unexpected places. In art, in travel, in the kindness of friends and strangers. I shared stories of Paris, of teaching workshops, of the young woman who'd found hope in my journey. I spoke about forgiveness, about letting go, and about the courage it takes to start over. As I finished, the room erupted in applause. Women lined up to hug me, to share their own stories, to thank me for reminding them that it's never too late to begin again. That night, as I walked home under the stars, I felt a sense of peace and purpose I'd never known before. I realized that my story wasn't just about survival. It was about transformation, about turning pain into power, and about helping others find their own light. But as I settled in for the evening, a letter arrived from Megan, hinting at a new adventure, and a new chapter, waiting just around the corner. I sat by the window, the letter from Megan trembling in my hands. I could still hear the echoes of applause from the women's group, the warmth of their hugs, the hope in their eyes. But Megan's words pulled me into a new current of excitement and uncertainty. "I've been offered a chance to lead a project in New York. It's a big step and honestly I'm scared. But I keep thinking about you, how you faced your fears, how you built a new life from the ashes. I want to be brave like you. Would you come visit me? Maybe we could explore the city together just like we did in Paris." Love. Megan. I smiled, pride swelling in my chest. My daughter was chasing her dreams and she wanted me by her side. I thought about all the years I'd spent putting my own dreams on hold, about the courage it took to say yes to myself. Now I had the chance to support Megan as she stepped into her own new beginning. I called her right away. Megan, I'd love to come. Let's make new memories, just the two of us. We spent the next week planning my trip. Sharon helped me pack, insisting I bring my sketchbook and a few of my favorite paintings. You never know who you'll meet in New York, she teased. Maybe you'll find a gallery there too. The day I left, the women from the community center gathered to see me off. Carol pressed a note into my hand. Thank you for reminding us that it's never too late to start over, Linda. You've given us all hope. As the train pulled out of the station, I watched my hometown fade into the distance, my heart full of gratitude and anticipation. I thought about the journey I'd taken, from heartbreak to healing, from fear to freedom, from silence to sharing my story. Arriving in New York, Megan met me at the station, her eyes bright with excitement. The city pulsed with energy and I felt a thrill of possibility. We spent our days exploring museums, walking through Central Park and sharing long talks over coffee. Megan introduced me to her friends and I found myself telling my story again and again, each time feeling a little braver, a little more whole. But as the week drew to a close, Megan received news that would change everything. A new opportunity, a new challenge, and a decision that would test both our courage and our bond. Megan paced the small apartment, her phone pressed to her ear, her brow furrowed in concentration. I watched her from the kitchen, remembering the little girl who used to cling to my hand on the first day of school. Now she was a woman, standing at the edge of her own new beginning. She hung up and turned to me, her eyes wide with a mix of excitement and fear. Mom, they want me to move to London. It's a huge promotion, but it means leaving everything behind. Again. I crossed the room and took her hands in mine. Sweetheart, you've already proven you can start over. You're brave and you're ready. And you know what? So am I. She smiled, tears glistening in her eyes. Would you come with me? At least for a little while? I don't want to do this alone. I hugged her tight, my heart full. Of course I will. We'll face this adventure together just like we always have. That night we sat on the balcony, the city lights twinkling below us. We talked about fears and dreams, about the pain of letting go and the thrill of starting fresh. I realized that my journey wasn't just about finding my own strength. It was about passing it on, about showing Megan that courage is something we build together, one step at a time. As we made plans for London, I felt a sense of peace settle over me. I was no longer afraid of change, no longer defined by the losses of my past. I was a woman who had learned to let go, to forgive, to love, and to live boldly. But as I drifted off to sleep that night, I received a message from Elise in Paris. Linda, the gallery wants to host a mother-daughter art show. They want to celebrate your story and Megan's too. Are you ready for one more adventure? I smiled, knowing in my heart that the answer was yes. Will Linda and Megan's journey to London, and their art show in Paris, bring them even closer, and what new lessons will they learn about love, family, and the courage to begin again? And the weeks that followed were a whirlwind of packing, planning, and goodbyes. Megan and I booked our flights to London, our hearts full of excitement and nerves. I found myself looking forward to the unknown, eager to see what new adventures awaited us on the other side of the ocean. Before we left, I called Elise in Paris to talk about the mother-daughter art show. Her voice was bubbling with enthusiasm. Linda, your story has touched so many. This show will be about more than just paintings. It will be about resilience, about starting over, about the bond between mothers and daughters. I promised her we'd be there, and Megan and I began to sketch ideas for our pieces. We spent evenings in our little New York apartment, side by side at the kitchen table, painting and sharing stories. It was a new kind of closeness, one built not just on love, but on mutual respect and understanding. The day we landed in London, the city greeted us with gray skies and a brisk wind. Megan's new job started right away, and I explored the city on my own, wandering through museums, sipping tea in cozy cafes, and finding inspiration in the vibrant art scene. I even joined a local painting group, where I met women from all over the world, each with her own story of courage and change. Megan thrived in her new role, but there were challenges too. There were days when she felt overwhelmed, when the distance from home seemed too great. On those days we leaned on each other, reminding ourselves that we were stronger together. As the date for the Paris art show approached, Elise sent us updates and encouragement. "The gallery is buzzing with excitement," she wrote. "People can't wait to see what you and Megan create." One evening as we worked on our paintings, Megan looked at me and smiled. "Mom, I never would have had the courage to do any of this without you. You showed me that it's never too late to start over." I squeezed her hand, my heart full. "We're both learning, sweetheart. And we're doing it together." But as the art show drew near, an unexpected message arrived. One that would test our resolve and remind us that every new horizon comes with its own set of challenges. A week before the Paris art show, Megan received an email from her boss. The company was restructuring and her new position in London was suddenly at risk. I watched her read the message, her face falling, her hands trembling just a little. "Mom, what if I made a mistake coming here?" she whispered, her voice small and uncertain. "What if I lose everything I've worked for?" I wrapped my arms around her, holding her close. "Sweetheart, you haven't lost anything. You've gained courage, experience, and a world of new possibilities. No matter what happens, you'll land on your feet. And I'll be right here with you." We spent the next few days in a haze of worry and hope, waiting for news. Megan threw herself into her art, pouring her fears and dreams onto the canvas. I did the same, finding comfort in the familiar rhythm of brushstrokes and color. Elise called from Paris, her voice full of encouragement. "Remember, Linda, art is born from every part of life. The joy and the pain. Whatever you're feeling, let it guide your hand. The world needs your story just as it is." The night before we left for Paris, Megan received another email. This time it was good news. Her job was safe and her boss praised her for her resilience and creativity. We hugged, relief and gratitude washing over us. "See," I whispered, "you're stronger than you think." The next morning we boarded the train to Paris, our hearts light with anticipation. As the city came into view, I felt a familiar thrill. A sense that anything was possible, that every ending could be a new beginning. At the gallery, Elise greeted us with open arms. The space was filled with our paintings, each one a testament to our journey. Women from all over the city came to see the show, sharing their own stories of heartbreak and hope. As Megan and I stood side by side, welcoming guests and answering questions, I realized that our art was more than just pictures on a wall. It was a bridge connecting us to others, reminding us all that we are never truly alone. But as the evening drew to a close, a familiar face appeared in the crowd. Someone from my past whose presence would stir up old memories and force me to confront the final piece of my healing. As the gallery buzzed with conversation and laughter, I caught sight of a man standing quietly near the back wall, studying one of my paintings. My heart skipped a beat. It was Robert, a friend from my college days, someone I hadn't seen in decades. We'd lost touch after graduation, each swept away by the tides of life, but I'd never forgotten his kindness or the way he'd encouraged my art when I was young. He turned and our eyes met. For a moment the years melted away. He smiled, warm and genuine, and made his way through the crowd. "Linda, I can't believe it's really you." I laughed, feeling a rush of nostalgia and surprise. "Robert, what are you doing in Paris?" He explained that he'd moved to France years ago, working as a writer and occasionally visiting galleries for inspiration. "I saw your name on the program and had to come see if it was the same Linda I remembered." We found a quiet corner and caught up on lost years. Our families, our journeys, the twists and turns that had brought us both to this moment. Robert listened as I shared my story, his eyes full of understanding. "You've always had a quiet strength, Linda. I'm glad the world finally gets to see it." Megan joined us and I introduced her to Robert. She listened, fascinated, as we reminisced about our college days and the dreams we'd once shared. I realized how far I'd come, from the woman who'd lost herself in someone else's shadow to the woman who now stood in her own light. As the evening ended, Robert pressed a card into my hand. "If you ever want to talk or just need a friend in Paris, call me. I'd love to catch up again." I smiled, feeling a spark of possibility. Maybe this was another new beginning, one I hadn't even dared to imagine. That night, as Megan and I walked back to our hotel under the Parisian stars, she squeezed my hand. "Mom, I'm so proud of you. You're not just surviving, you're living. And you're teaching me to do the same." I hugged her, my heart full. "We're both learning, sweetheart. And the best part? Our story isn't over yet." But as we drifted off to sleep, I knew that returning home would bring its own challenges. and its own joys. The journey of healing, of loving, of living boldly was far from finished. Will Linda's reconnection with her past open new doors? And how will she and Megan continue to grow as they return home to face the next chapter of their lives? Returning home after Paris felt different this time. The little house that once echoed with loneliness now welcomed me with warmth and possibility. Megan and I unpacked our bags, our hearts still full from the art show, the laughter, and the unexpected reunion with Robert. The walls of my home seemed to glow with new energy, as if they too had been changed by our journey. Sharon was waiting for us with a homemade casserole and 1,000 questions. "Tell me everything," she demanded, her eyes sparkling as Megan and I recounted every detail. The gallery, the women we'd met, the way our paintings had touched so many lives. As we settled back into our routines, I found myself thinking often of Robert. His gentle encouragement, his understanding smile, the way he'd listened without judgment, it all lingered in my mind. We exchanged a few emails, sharing stories and photos, and I felt a quiet excitement at the thought of seeing him again someday. But life at home was busy too. The women's group at the community center invited me to lead a workshop, and soon I was helping others find their voices through art. Megan, inspired by our travels, started a blog about courage and new beginnings, and her words resonated with women all over the world. One afternoon, as I was setting up for a painting class, Carol pulled me aside. "Linda, you've changed this place. You've given us hope. But I see something else in you too, a light that wasn't there before. What's next for you?" I smiled, thinking of Paris, of Robert, of the adventures still waiting. "I don't know, Carol. But for the first time, I'm not afraid to find out." That evening, Megan and I sat on the porch, watching the sun set over our little town. She leaned her head on my shoulder. "Mom, do you ever wish things had turned out differently?" I thought for a moment, then shook my head. "No, sweetheart. Every twist and turn brought us here. And here is exactly where we're meant to be." But as the stars came out, my phone buzzed with a message from Robert. "Linda, I'll be in your town next month for a writers' conference. Would you like to meet for coffee?" My heart fluttered with anticipation. Maybe, just maybe, the next chapter was about to begin. The days leading up to Robert's visit passed in a gentle blur. I threw myself into my art classes and community work, but every so often I'd catch myself daydreaming, wondering what it would be like to see him again, to sit across from him and talk about life, not as the people we once were, but as the people we'd become. Megan noticed my quiet excitement. One evening, as we cooked dinner together, she nudged me with a grin. "You like him, don't you, Mom?" I laughed, a little embarrassed. "Maybe I do. It's been a long time since I felt this way about anyone. I'm not even sure I remember how to date." He squeezed my hand. "Just be yourself. That's more than enough." The day of the conference arrived, and I found myself standing in front of my closet, agonizing over what to wear. In the end, I chose a simple dress and my favorite scarf, the one I'd bought in Paris. As I walked to the cafe where we'd agreed to meet, my heart pounded with nerves and hope. Robert was already there, sitting by the window with a notebook and a cup of coffee. He stood when he saw me, his smile warm and genuine. "Linda, you look wonderful." We talked for hours, sharing stories of our journeys, our families, our dreams for the future. There was an ease between us, a sense of understanding that made me feel seen and valued. He told me about his writing, about the challenges he'd faced, about the ways he'd learned to let go of regret and embrace possibility. As the afternoon sun slanted through the window, Robert reached across the table and took my hand. "Linda, I don't know what the future holds, but I'd like to find out, with you." My heart swelled with gratitude and joy. "I'd like that too, Robert. More than you know." We parted with a promise to see each other again soon, both of us smiling like teenagers with a secret. That night, as I told Megan about the afternoon, she hugged me tight. "You deserve every bit of happiness, Mom. I'm so proud of you." But as I drifted off to sleep, I knew that opening my heart again would take courage, and that the journey of love, like the journey of healing, was just beginning. The days after my coffee with Robert felt like a new season blooming in my life. We exchanged messages and phone calls, each conversation a little deeper, a little more honest. He sent me drafts of his latest stories, and I shared photos of my newest paintings. It was a gentle, hopeful courtship, one built on respect, laughter, and the wisdom that comes from having lived through heartbreak and healing. Megan watched all this with a knowing smile. One evening, as we sat on the porch, she said, You know, Mom, I think you're teaching me more about love now than you ever did when I was a kid. I squeezed her hand, my heart full. Love isn't about never getting hurt, sweetheart. It's about being brave enough to try again even when you're scared. The community noticed the change in me too. Carol and Sharon teased me about my Parisian glow, and the women in my art class asked for updates on Robert. I realized that my story, my willingness to start over, to open my heart again, was giving others permission to do the same. A few weeks later, Robert invited me to a reading at the local library. He stood at the podium, his voice steady as he read a story about second chances and the courage to begin again. When he finished, he looked right at me, his eyes shining with gratitude. Afterward, we walked together under the stars, talking about the future. Linda, he said softly, I don't want to rush anything, but I'd like to see where this goes with you. I smiled, feeling a peace I hadn't known in years. So would I, Robert. Let's take it one day at a time. As we said goodnight, I realized that my life had come full circle. I was no longer defined by what I'd lost, but by what I'd found: love, friendship, purpose, and the courage to keep moving forward. But as I lay in bed that night, I knew there was still one more chapter to write. A chapter about sharing what I'd learned with others, about helping women everywhere find their own strength and hope. Will Linda's journey inspire others to embrace new beginnings? And how will she use her story to help women everywhere find their own voice? The first time I stood in front of a room full of women, ready to share my story, I felt the same flutter of nerves I'd felt before my art show in Paris. But as I looked out at their faces, some young, some old, all of them carrying their own burdens and dreams, I knew I was exactly where I was meant to be. The community center was packed. Sharon had organized the event, calling it New Beginnings, Stories of Strength. Megan sat in the front row, her eyes shining with pride. Even Robert was there, notebook in hand, ready to capture every word. I took a deep breath and began. For 25 years, I thought my life was set. I was a wife, a mother, a woman who put everyone else first. When my marriage ended, I thought I'd lost everything. But what I found was myself. I spoke about the pain of betrayal, the fear of starting over, and the slow, steady work of healing. I told them about Paris, about painting, about the courage it took to open my heart again. I shared the lessons I'd learned, that endings can be beginnings, that forgiveness is a gift you give yourself, and that it's never too late to chase your dreams. As I finished, the room was silent for a moment, then filled with applause. Women lined up to hug me, to share their own stories, to thank me for giving them hope. Afterward, Megan hugged me tight. You're changing lives, Mom. You're showing women everywhere that they can be brave too. Robert smiled, his eyes full of love. You've built something beautiful, Linda. Not just for yourself, but for everyone who hears your story. That night, as I sat on my porch under the stars, I thought about the journey that had brought me here. I realized that my legacy wasn't just in the art I'd created or the love I'd found again. It was in the lives I'd touched, the women I'd inspired, the hope I'd helped to kindle. But as I sipped my tea, I received an email from Elise in Paris. Linda, the gallery wants to make your story a permanent exhibit. They want to inspire women from all over the world. Are you ready to leave your mark? I smiled, feeling the weight and wonder of it all. Maybe this was the true beginning of my legacy. The days that followed were filled with a new kind of purpose. Elise's email from Paris felt like a dream come true. My journey, my art, and my story would become a permanent part of the gallery, a beacon for women searching for hope and strength. I spent hours on the phone with Elise, planning the exhibit, choosing which paintings and journal entries to include, and writing a letter to be displayed at the entrance. Megan helped me sort through old sketches and photographs, her laughter filling the house as we remembered the adventures we'd shared. Mom, you're leaving a trail for others to follow, she said, her voice full of pride. You're showing them that it's never too late to start over. Robert was by my side every step of the way, offering encouragement and gentle wisdom. He even wrote a short story for the exhibit, weaving together the themes of love, loss, and new beginnings that had defined both our lives. The community rallied around me too. Sharon organized a send-off party, inviting everyone who had been part of my journey. The women from my art class brought their own paintings, inspired by the lessons we'd learned together. Carol made a speech, her voice trembling with emotion. Linda, you've given us all permission to dream again. Thank you for reminding us that we are never alone. As the day of the exhibit's opening approached, I felt a mix of nerves and excitement. I knew that sharing my story on such a grand scale would mean opening old wounds, but I also knew it would help others heal. The night before I left for Paris, I sat on the porch with Megan and Robert, watching the fireflies dance in the warm summer air. "Are you ready for this, Mom?" Megan asked, her eyes searching mine. I smiled, feeling the truth settle deep in my bones. I am. For the first time in my life, I know exactly who I am, and I'm proud of the woman I've become. But as I packed my bags for Paris, a letter arrived from Tom's sister. A reminder that the past, while forgiven, is never truly forgotten. Her words would bring one last lesson and one final act of grace, before I stepped fully into my legacy. The letter from Tom's sister arrived just as I was zipping up my suitcase. Her handwriting was familiar, a little shaky, and as I read her words, I felt a wave of old memories and new understanding. "Linda, I wanted to thank you for the kindness you showed Tom even after everything. He told me about your visit at the hospital, about how you forgave him. It brought him peace in his last days. I know things weren't easy, but you gave him and all of us a gift. I hope you know how much you're loved, not just by your family but by everyone whose life you've touched. With gratitude, Susan." Tears filled my eyes as I folded the letter. I realized that forgiveness truly is a gift we give ourselves, but it can also ripple out, bringing healing to others in ways we may never see. The next day I flew to Paris with Megan and Robert by my side. The gallery was filled with women from all over the world. Some laughing, some crying, all of them finding pieces of their own stories in my paintings and words. Elise introduced me and I stood before the crowd, my heart full. "I am not the woman I was 25 years ago," I began. "I am stronger, braver, and more hopeful than I ever imagined. My story is not unique. Every woman here has faced heartbreak, fear, and the challenge of starting over. But together we are unstoppable. We are the authors of our own lives." The applause was thunderous, but what mattered most were the quiet conversations afterward. The women who hugged me, who whispered, "Thank you for giving me hope," who promised to start their own journeys of healing and courage. That night, as I walked along the Seine with Megan and Robert, I felt a peace I'd never known. My legacy wasn't just in the art on the walls or the words in the gallery. It was in every life I'd touched, every heart I'd helped to mend, every woman who now believed she could begin again. If you're listening to my story tonight, I want you to remember, no matter how lost or broken you feel, you are never alone. You have the power to forgive, to heal, and to start over. Your story matters. Your voice matters. And there is always a new chapter waiting to be written. Have you ever had to start over after heartbreak? What gave you the courage to begin again? Share your story in the comments below. I'd love to hear from you. And if this story touched your heart, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs a little hope today. Thank you for being part of my family right here, right now. Until next time, remember, there's always a place for you at my table.